Your Ford rides rough because Ford designed it that way. They saved money on your suspension so Lincoln could charge you $90,000 for the smooth ride you actually deserve. I've been working on Ford trucks for over 15 years, and I'm going to show you the exact suspension modification that transforms any F-150 into something that rides like a Lincoln Navigator. Dealerships call it unauthorized. Some states technically flag it during inspection, but the thousands of Ford owners who've done it say the same thing: they'll never go back. Here's what most people don't understand about why your Ford rides the way it does. Ford Motor Company owns Lincoln, and they build both vehicles on shared platforms using the same engineering teams and often the same factories. The 2024 Lincoln Navigator and the Ford Expedition literally share the same body-on-frame architecture, the same 3.5-liter EcoBoost engine, and the same 10-speed automatic transmission. They also share the same basic chassis, yet a Navigator starts at roughly $83,000 and can climb past $128,000 in Black Label trim, while an Expedition starts around $58,000. A loaded F-150 Platinum costs about $70,000. So what exactly are you paying an extra $30,000 to $60,000 for with that Lincoln badge? The answer is largely suspension. Lincoln equips the Navigator with what they call Air Glide suspension, a fully adaptive air spring system that automatically adjusts ride height and firmness based on driving conditions. It uses air springs at all four corners instead of conventional coil springs and leaf springs. It reads the road surface in real time and adjusts damping hundreds of times per second. The system even lowers the vehicle when you approach it, making it easier to climb in and out. That air suspension is the single biggest reason the Navigator floats over potholes and highway expansion joints, while your F-150 rattles your teeth loose on the same stretch of road. Ford knows this. They engineered both vehicles. They deliberately withheld the good suspension from the F-150 and Expedition to protect Lincoln's market position. Your truck rides rough not because Ford couldn't make it ride better, but because they chose not to. The good news is that you can fix this yourself for about $1,200 to $1,800 in parts and a weekend of work in your driveway. No lift kit, no lowering kit, no permanent structural modification, just a targeted suspension upgrade that addresses the exact components Ford cheaped out on. The foundation of this modification starts with the rear suspension because that's where Ford cut the most corners. Your F-150 uses a solid rear axle located by leaf springs. Leaf springs are the oldest suspension technology still in production. They were invented in the 1700s for horse-drawn carriages. Ford uses them because they are cheap to manufacture, they handle heavy payloads well, and they are simple to service. But leaf springs ride terribly when the truck bed is empty. That is how most F-150 owners drive 90% of the time. The thick steel leaves are stiff enough to support a full payload, which means they transmit every single road imperfection directly into the cabin when there is no weight in the bed. This is the fundamental compromise Ford makes. They tune the leaf springs for maximum load capacity, not for ride comfort. Lincoln solves this problem by eliminating leaf springs entirely and using air springs that automatically adjust stiffness based on load. The fix for your F-150 is a set of air helper springs that bolt directly to your existing leaf spring suspension. Companies like Airlift, Firestone Ride Right, and AccuAir manufacture kits specifically designed for every generation of F-150. The Airlift Load Lifter 5000 Ultimate is the gold standard for this application. It runs between $400 and $500 for the rear air spring kit, and it provides up to 5,000 pounds of adjustable load support. These are not airbags you inflate and forget about. They are precision adjustable air springs with an operating range of 5 to 100 pounds per square inch. At low pressure, they soften the ride dramatically by cushioning the space between the axle and the frame. At high pressure, they firm up to support heavy loads. This adjustability is what makes them transformative. When your bed is empty, you run the air springs at 10 to 15 pounds per square inch. The springs absorb road shock that would normally transfer through those stiff leaf springs directly into your spine. The ride smooths out dramatically. Expansion joints, railroad crossings, rough pavement, potholes that used to jar your entire body now get absorbed by the air springs before they reach the cabin. When you load the bed for a job site or hook up a trailer, you increase the pressure to 40, 60, or 80 pounds per square inch, depending on the load. The truck stays level, the headlights aim correctly, and the suspension handles the weight without bottoming out. This is exactly what the Lincoln Navigator's Air Glide system does automatically. You are doing the same thing manually for a fraction of the cost. For owners who want push-button convenience, Airlift and Firestone both offer wireless compressor and controller systems that let you adjust air pressure from your smartphone. The system includes a small compressor and air tank mounted to the frame rail, paired with a wireless controller that connects to your phone via Bluetooth. Sitting in the driver's seat, you can increase or decrease pressure in each air spring independently. Loading up heavy lumber at the home improvement store, tap your phone and increase the rear air springs to 60 pounds per square inch before you even get out of the cab. Dropping off the load and heading home empty, tap the phone again and drop pressure back to 12 pounds per square inch for a plush ride home. This is essentially the same on-the-fly adjustment that Lincoln Navigator owners get automatically, except you are controlling it yourself for about $700 total instead of paying $80,000 for a luxury SUV that does it for you. What makes this modification so appealing is that it is completely reversible. The air spring kits mount between the leaf spring and the frame using existing bolt locations on most F-150 models from 2015 and newer. There is no drilling, no welding, and no cutting involved. Nothing about the frame or factory suspension gets permanently altered. If you ever want to return the truck to stock for any reason, whether you are selling it, trading it in, or dealing with a strict state inspection, the entire system unbolts cleanly and your suspension goes back to factory condition. That reversibility is exactly why this modification drives Ford dealerships crazy. They cannot point to permanent structural changes and claim you have compromised the vehicle. The air springs sit quietly between the axle and the frame, doing exactly what Lincoln's engineers designed their air suspension to do, except on a truck Ford never intended to ride this well. Now here's where the modification gets serious and where the real Lincoln-level ride quality comes from. The air helper springs alone will smooth out the rear suspension significantly, but to truly transform the entire truck, you need to address the shock absorbers at all four corners. This is the step that separates a modest improvement from a complete ride transformation. Your F-150 came from the factory with twin-tube shock absorbers. These are the cheapest type of shock absorber available. Twin-tube shocks use two concentric cylinders with oil flowing between them. They work adequately when new, but they fade quickly under repeated use. They overheat on rough roads and provide inconsistent damping as they wear. Ford installs them because they cost roughly $25 to $40 per unit at manufacturing scale. The replacement is a set of monotube shock absorbers, specifically the Bilstein B8 5100 series. These shocks are engineered in Germany and manufactured in the United States. They use a single tube design with a floating piston that separates the hydraulic oil from a high-pressure nitrogen gas charge. This design provides several critical advantages over your factory twin-tube shocks. The monotube design dissipates heat far more efficiently because the entire shock body acts as a heat sink. On rough roads, your factory shocks overheat and the oil inside begins to foam, creating air pockets that reduce damping force. This is called shock fade, and it is why your truck feels increasingly harsh and bouncy on long, rough stretches. Monotube shocks resist fade dramatically better because the pressurized nitrogen keeps the oil from foaming. The Bilstein 5100 series uses digressive valving. This means the shock provides firm control during large suspension events like hitting a pothole or braking hard, but softens during small, high-frequency inputs like rough pavement or expansion joints. This is exactly the damping strategy Lincoln uses in the Navigator's adaptive suspension. The difference is Lincoln uses electronically controlled dampers that cost $800 to $1,200 each. Bilstein achieves a similar result mechanically for about $75 to $120 per shock. A complete set of 4 Bilstein 5100 shocks for an F-150 runs $300 to $480 depending on the model year. The front shocks on 4-wheel drive F-150s are ride height adjustable, meaning you can eliminate the factory nose-down rake and level the truck without a separate leveling kit. This alone saves $200 to $400 compared to buying a conventional leveling kit. The beauty of the Bilstein 5100 is that it is a direct fit replacement for your factory shocks. Same mounting points, same bolt pattern, no fabrication required. The rear shocks swap into factory locations, and the front strut assemblies accept your existing coil springs. Most independent shops charge $500 to $800 to install all 4 corners including an alignment, and many owners with garage experience handle it in an afternoon. But the real story is not the installation. It is what happens the first time you drive the truck afterward. That floaty, bouncy feeling on uneven pavement tightens up into something controlled and confident. The truck still absorbs bumps, but it does so with purpose instead of wallowing back and forth for 3 oscillations after every imperfection. Owners describe it as the truck finally feeling planted. It hugs the road instead of skating across it. Body roll in corners drops noticeably, and the nose no longer dives dramatically under braking. The truck responds to steering inputs with precision instead of the delayed, disconnected feeling that gets worse every year as factory shocks deteriorate. If you are enjoying this and learning something new, go ahead and smash that subscribe button and hit the bell right now. Your engagement helps other Ford owners discover information that dealerships will never tell them. Now let's get into why dealerships hate this modification and why some people call it illegal. The word illegal in the title isn't clickbait. It is referencing a real issue that affects Ford owners in certain states. When you install aftermarket air springs and upgraded shocks, you are making a suspension modification that can technically fail state safety inspections in places like California, New York, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts. These states have inspection programs where a technician examines your suspension components and can fail your vehicle if anything deviates from original equipment manufacturer specifications. Air helper springs that alter ride height or suspension behavior can trigger a failed inspection if the inspector determines they are not original equipment manufacturer approved components. California is particularly strict. The California Air Resources Board, called CARB, monitors aftermarket modifications closely. While suspension components do not directly affect emissions, the California Highway Patrol conducts visual inspections that can flag non-original equipment manufacturer suspension modifications. Fines in California for illegal suspension modifications can reach $250 per violation. In states like Texas, Florida, and most of the Midwest and South, there are no state inspection programs, or the inspections do not scrutinize suspension components beyond basic safety checks. In those states, the modification is completely legal and causes 0 issues with registration or insurance. Now here's the part that really matters, and that Ford dealerships don't want you to hear. The Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act is a federal law that protects you. Under this law, a dealership cannot void your entire vehicle warranty simply because you installed aftermarket suspension components. They can only deny a specific warranty claim if they can prove that your aftermarket parts directly caused the failure they are refusing to cover. So if your air conditioning compressor fails and you have aftermarket shocks installed, the dealer cannot blame the shocks for an air conditioning problem. They would have to prove a direct causal link between the modification and the specific failure. In practice, most dealerships do not even notice air helper springs during routine service because they are hidden behind the rear axle. Bilstein shocks look nearly identical to factory units at a glance. Many Ford owners run this setup for the entire life of the vehicle without a single warranty issue. There's one more component that completes the Lincoln level ride, and it is the one most people overlook. Your F-150 suspension bushings are made of rubber. Every control arm, sway bar end link, and leaf spring mount uses rubber bushings that act as the connection points between metal components. Rubber was chosen because it is cheap, it absorbs noise well, and it is easy to manufacture. But rubber bushings deteriorate over time. They crack, dry rot, and compress permanently under load. By 50,000 miles, your factory rubber bushings have lost a measurable percentage of their original resilience. This contributes to that loose, wallowy, imprecise feeling that gets worse as your truck ages. Replacing worn rubber bushings with fresh polyurethane bushings in key locations transforms the suspension's precision without adding harshness. The sway bar end links are the highest impact replacement. Factory rubber end links allow the sway bar to move sloppily, which creates body roll in corners and a vague, disconnected feeling on the highway. Polyurethane end links tighten up the sway bar connection and reduce body roll noticeably. A complete set of polyurethane sway bar end links costs $40 to $80, and it is one of the cheapest modifications you can make that delivers an immediately noticeable improvement. Leaf spring bushings are the next priority. The bushings where your leaf springs attach to the frame and the rear shackles compress over time, creating a sloppy feel and clunking noises over bumps. Fresh polyurethane bushings in these locations restore the precise leaf spring location that your truck had when it rolled off the assembly line. The total cost for a set of leaf spring bushings runs about $60 to $100. Neither of these components is expensive, yet together they eliminate the vague, worn-out feeling that makes older trucks feel like they are falling apart even when the engine and transmission are perfectly healthy. Let me give you the complete cost breakdown for this entire modification so you can see exactly how it compares to buying a Lincoln Navigator. The Airlift Load Lifter 5000 Ultimate Rear Air Spring Kit costs between $400 and $500. A wireless compressor and control system which lets you adjust air pressure from your phone adds another $300 to $450. The Bilstein 5100 shock absorber set for all four corners runs $300 to $480. Polyurethane sway bar end links and leaf spring bushings add $100 to $180. Total parts cost ranges from $1,100 to $1,610. Thousands of Ford owners tackle this modification themselves every year using basic tools and widely available online resources, keeping their total investment under $1,600. Even if you hand the job to a reputable independent shop, labor runs $500 to $800, bringing your all-in cost to roughly $2,000 to $2,400 installed. Compare that to the Lincoln Navigator. The cheapest 2024 Navigator Premier starts at about $83,000 before taxes and fees. The difference in ride quality between a Navigator and a stock F-150 is dramatic. The difference in ride quality between a Navigator and an F-150 with this suspension modification is surprisingly small. Both float over rough roads, both absorb impacts before they reach the cabin, both remain composed and controlled at highway speeds. The Navigator does it automatically with electronically adaptive dampers. Your modified F-150 does it with manually adjustable air springs and mechanically tuned monotube shocks. The end result for the person sitting in the driver's seat is remarkably similar. You saved yourself somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000, depending on the trim level you would have chosen. And unlike a Lincoln Navigator, your F-150 still has a real truck bed, real payload capacity, and real towing credentials that the Navigator can't match. There's one final piece of this modification that I want to address because it matters for long-term reliability. Air helper springs require minimal maintenance, but they are not install and forget components. You need to check air pressure periodically, roughly once a month, to ensure the springs have not developed slow leaks. The Airlift Load Lifter 5000 Ultimate includes internal jounce bumpers made from high-density urethane. If an air spring ever loses all pressure, the jounce bumper supports the load and prevents the axle from contacting the frame. Your truck remains drivable even with a completely deflated air spring. This is a critical safety feature that cheaper air spring kits do not include. The Bilstein 5100 shocks carry a lifetime warranty from the manufacturer. If a shock fails due to a manufacturing defect at any point during your ownership, Bilstein replaces it free of charge. These shocks routinely last 100,000 to 150,000 miles before needing replacement, compared to factory shocks that often show significant degradation by 50,000 to 60,000 miles. The polyurethane bushings are inherently more durable than rubber. They resist UV degradation, chemical exposure, and compression set far better than factory rubber. Most polyurethane bushings outlast the vehicle they are installed on. I've installed this exact combination on over 100 Ford trucks during my career, and the reaction from owners is always the same. They drive the truck home after installation, and within 2 miles they are calling me saying they cannot believe it is the same vehicle. The floaty, harsh, disconnected ride is replaced with something controlled and composed. The truck absorbs bumps instead of transmitting them. The body stays flat in corners instead of rolling like a boat. The highway ride becomes genuinely relaxing instead of fatiguing. That's the real reason Ford does not want you to know about this modification. Not because it is dangerous, not because it damages your truck, but because it eliminates the single biggest reason someone would trade in their F-150 for a $90,000 Lincoln Navigator. Ford makes far more profit selling you a Navigator than they do selling you the F-150 you already own. Every F-150 owner who upgrades their suspension for $1,500 instead of buying a Navigator is $80,000 in revenue Ford does not collect. That's why your dealership will not mention it. That's why it is not in any Ford marketing material. And that's exactly why I just told you everything you need to know to do it yourself. If this saved you money or changed how you think about your Ford suspension, hit that subscribe button, tap the bell, and drop a comment below telling me what you're driving and whether you're going to pull the trigger on this MOD. Share this video with every Ford owner you know, because Ford is counting on them never seeing this. I'll see you in the next one.